We definitely have a major shock. And I have the feeling that many have underestimated the ability of Iran to cause so much disruption.
What's happening with the energy sector slash oil and gas industry right now?
Many people are trying to get their head around what is happening today, but we definitely have a major shock that has affected the biggest oil and gas producers and exporters in the world. We have seen not only energy infrastructure in the region, in countries that have nothing to do with the war, by the way, like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, UAE, even Iraq and Bahrain. These countries have nothing to do with the war, but they happen to be in that neighborhood. And Iran has been attacking their energy infrastructure. But I would say the biggest disruption that we are seeing today is because the Iranians have blocked the Strait of Hormuz. And the Strait of Hormuz is a very tiny water passage whereby you have almost 20% of global oil trade. So over 20% of the oil that is traded globally comes through that little narrow strait. And the same thing for liquefied natural gas, or what we call LNG. Also around 20% goes through that strait. And as a result, we have serious supply disruption in the world from oil and gas. And that's why we're seeing prices jumping almost every day. And we are seeing levels that we have not seen for years now.
How does this kind of ripple throughout the whole rest of the economy?
Often we don't understand the importance of oil to our modern society. I mean, it's amazing. This is an industry which is more than a century old and still has such a major impact on global economy. I would say oil is king in the transport sector. Even if we have electric vehicles, they are not big enough to cause a dent in the demand for oil. But also, where you're sitting now, if you look around you, many products have an oil component into them: plastic, medicine, oil, perfume, makeup, some clothes. So there is always an element of petroleum into that. And when you have this input becoming more expensive, then the higher cost is going to affect the final price of some of the products that we are buying. So this is where oil has an impact on the economy. However, today oil is by far less important than what we saw in the 70s. So for those of you people who are interested, they can go online, check the oil crisis of 1973, and they would see people queuing at petrol stations in the US. A huge economic problem resulted from that. But that's when oil was really much more important because we did not develop alternatives. Our dependence on oil in terms of intensity, oil intensity is half what it used to be in the 70s. And that's why I want to say here something that may sound a bit crazy, but for oil prices to be only hovering around 100 is not too bad, given the scale of the problem that we have in the Middle East. If the same crisis would have happened perhaps 20, 30 years ago, I bet you would have seen prices perhaps 200 or even much higher than that.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I've noticed is like, oh, I thought this would be worse by now, considering how big of a problem that this seems to be over there.
Exactly.
If you were to kind of quantify this in terms of the importance of the global economy, because I think in terms of like 1 through 10, so to speak, in the 1970s, it would have been like number 1, 2, 3.
So let's say maybe in the 70s it was 1 because it was accounting for more than, on its own, for more than half of our needs, globally energy needs. And today it's perhaps 3.
So one of the things that has kind of come out is Iran said oil could be $200 a barrel. What would that look like?
Not pleasant. It's going to look nasty, but people don't realize that actually we've been there before. 2008, just before the financial crisis and the global economic crisis, prices were above perhaps $200 a barrel. Also, around 2022, we saw prices much higher than way much higher than what we are seeing today. That's when Russia invaded Ukraine. But most importantly, when we started this year in January, everybody was expecting that we were going to have what we call surplus in supply. There is much more supply than what we needed. And that kind of gave us some safety cushions. However, if we started the year in an already tight situation where demand would be booming and supply, we wouldn't have enough supply, then I would say it would have been a much nastier scenario. So yes, I think the Iranians want to see $200 a barrel because they think that's what causes some serious economic pain. But I mean, honestly, I think they need to revisit the market fundamentals and understand that oil markets today are very different from when they were in the 70s and the 80s.
Is there a timeline you would say that, like, okay, if this goes on for a total of 3 months, or if it goes on for 6 months, like, where do you think in that timeline this gets really bad?
Whenever you sail in the fog without any clear end in sight, that creates volatility in the market. So, and you can see it actually when you observe the price, how it is traded every day. You can see it's going up and down, up and down, up and down. So that makes it very difficult to plan, to invest, to prepare clear budgets, let's say, for several years. That said, we should not lose sight of the potential impact on demand. There is what we call demand destruction. We know that demand reacts to higher prices. So the longer we remain in this high price territory, the more the demand destruction is going to be visible. And that by itself can help in easing the pressure on prices. So it's never one card or one factor. It's a combination. It's very dynamic. But the rule of thumb today, I would say the more disruptions we have from the region, the longer they last, the more we are likely to stay in the current price level that we are seeing.
Who benefits?
Oh my goodness, I can think of quite a few. People don't realize that actually volatility is fantastic business for some traders because they make a lot of money from buying and selling, and they are on high, buy this, sell that. I can see oil producers outside the region are benefiting a lot, even though, for example, the US is in a peculiar state because they are a big consumer, but they are also a big producer. So I think the American oil producers may be benefiting from windfalls, higher profits, abnormal profits because of these high prices. I would say other producers around the world are also benefiting from those prices. People who run, let's say, shipping industry, the rate of renting a tanker, for example, has increased significantly. So it's never going to be a clear cut that, we only have losers because we're thinking from our perspective as consumers. I'm pretty sure there are lots of people out there that I have not mentioned that are also benefiting from what's going on in the region.